sitting here saying when's the palm.
Okay, I'm back from blowing up the toilet.
Hell yeah.
There's a CE.
Kate is streaming now.
Huh? Oh, she's
Kate
streaming.
is streaming.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay.
Why is my...
Alright, bro. Let's see this 2 million gold.
I'm proud of myself. I only have one golden sword.
Look at you.
And it was literally because my mouse stopped working.
So you couldn't
I got
move
like
into it at all.
6.
Yeah.
This tier is very bittersweet memory, or that tier was very bittersweet memories.
Yeah.
Because that was that was it tree and bird? No.
Hey,
That
Barna,
was
how you
that
doing?
water guy and something.
I don't remember. Barely. I think I was safer there too, but I'm not sure.
Final Fantasy's doing okay. I'm just taking a break from MSQ so I don't get burned out.
It does unless shit ton HP though.
Pots is 9 minutes. So.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to buy the writing map while I was there. Whoopsie.
Oh, you guys are playing 11? Nice.
You get it?
Nope.
Evil.
Don't think I'm making it there. It's in the south.
You have 8 minutes. Oh!
No, I guess I gotta res you. Where'd you even die?
I picked up a chest. And then see that thing was chasing me and it punched me in the face.
Where is that?
Next to the Aether shard. I'm like on a chest.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh, Piston's back in here again. As soon as I come in here, she's immediately just here.
Careful, it's coming back for a vengeance. The vengeance.
What the fuck is that? I'm gonna check this chest and then go buy my riding map and not forget to buy my riding map. It's the deer right now if you want to go try and catch it. The gear's E is 4,000. That's right.
It's dead. Convulsion.
The gold. The gold is just classes. Oh, you can get the fixatives as well with the gold.
Good night. Thanks for popping in.
6 minutes. I'm gonna try to run up towards the north. That's the antiquarian. You want to try? What is that? Quarried away?
Let me see how much XP I get now.
Yeah, those two pots.
There we go, 25. I'm like, what is that noise? Chris, thank you so much for the bits. How you doing, Chris? Nice.
Come on. It's the pregnant chimera. How? This is in. Oh no, it's not.
No, it is. Now it's out.
Oh. Respawn. Wow. Okay. You might want to just return and head there.
Let's go.
Without the mount speed, it's pretty far away. I just went this way because of the mount speed. I was just trying.
Where am I going? I don't even know where these spawn.
Oh, the I know the fate. We could probably hit that fate and then come back to the
I'm getting ready for sleep.
It spawns next
How
to
is,
the
I keep asking, how's the new place?
Or somewhere near-ish to that.
Let me grab this. Oh, hello, lady. Just in case you didn't know, this isn't World of Warcraft. Doom, 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 ba-doom.
People brought mobs here. This is so messed up.
What the fuck?
Yeah, this one's not fun.
You don't believe me? Oh, it's okay. Doom, doom, doom. Ain't no way I got. Okay, let me check my little nudes.
Oh, I see you now. Oh, I don't see you.
I'm never gonna kill this sometime.
Oh, let's check this out.
No, I gotta check these guys, see if they have what I need.
Since button, I don't care. I'm fine. I'm scared for my life.
I don't think we go this thing. We're all tanks.
I think you might be right. I don't want to just run away now.
I do.
Okay. And it's by the Ethernet shard in the bottom. Kind of where you rested me.
Doomy doomy doom. The doom 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 doom. What do I need again?
I'm not getting out of combat.
That's simplistic.
Yeah. Yes, I'm not getting pod system.
That's my fault. I should have said to come here.
I figured this
Index
one would have
this
had
and
it,
take
but
so long. Or have so much HP. But don't
No, just because
find those.
everyone's in the critical room.
Oh, are they close enough for proximity increased HP?
No, just because no one's in here.
Well, the mob HP
Oh,
scales based on how many people are here, I thought.
nor they don't. Oh, they're done in 7 minutes.
There it is. Well, that is not where I thought it was. I would have misled the fuck out of you, Aaron.
What are you up to, lady?
Anyway.
How your stream was good the rest of the time, yeah? Yeah. OC? What's OC? What's OC?
Ow.
Just a bit.
Let's see, do I just go and gather this or do I go buy it? Do I buy it? Do I take my miner out there and go take care of it? At least my miner's leveled up
Before this.
a bit.
Okay, I think I figured it out. So go out for the first one, go to where one of the first ones were, and then go directly to the middle. This is how to dodge it.
Where do I want to go?
Okay, so out here. Oh, nope,
Around
did that wrong.
here, so probably to
Okay, I
Quarry
was
Mill.
on the second one, but it's mostly right.
gather my ass some water. Get my gay ass horse out of here.
Let's try this again. So here and here. Oh, I got hit by 2 still. That wasn't my all four. Final.
It should be around here somewhere. Oh. Do you have what I need? You do.
This is taking so fucking long.
Hey, nope, assault never come here. This is the worst thing ever.
The last time I did it, it wasn't this bad, but I don't know what the hell happened here with this game.
Yeah, something sick and twisted happened to the scaling.
I think
This
I just
should
need
not
one more mineral
have this
deposit and I
much
should be
HP
good.
to last longer than the CE did.
Yeah. Maybe it did fuck with the scaling because all those people were over there. Or maybe they were here at the start, and then...
I think that's maybe what happened. Some people griefed it. But we'll never know. All we'll know is that we didn't get bots.
Because of these nasty people.
I was gonna say because of me, but yeah, them too.
Yeah, I think Blue and Yuzu are working on something right now.
Make sure you get your writing map.
I have enough still.
Oh, I can't read. I thought that would have given us 50. Well, that didn't give us any. I'm dead.
Hell yeah.
No.
Hell yeah.
Where are you?
I'm at the very top. The chest that to the left.
Fucking mouse.
The bronze chest in the corner up there. That's the crystal where we just were. That crystal.
No. I see. Well, good luck. I'm coming.
I did it again where I wasn't paying attention. I saw the chest and I clicked the chest and there was something following me.
I deposited my rock salt, didn't I? I did. Give it to my retainer. Like a dum-dum.
It should de-aggro by the time you get to me. Oh, look, you have a chest here too. Just hope that guy doesn't 360 no-scope you like he 360 no-scoped me.
He's about to. Okay, turn around, bastard.
Right, I got this.
If I don't do anything. Just if I die, press me. Just do anything, I don't give a shit.
I was just gonna run past it and make you res me or distract it while you picked it up. We can go to the Fate or the Sea. Surely the Fate is not gonna be evil, right?
This? I'm going to see. Oh, shit.
Okay. Wait, can you do your buffs? For your buff?
Nope.
Okay.
You should know better than to ask that question.
If you walk by,
54. Is it dying faster now? It's a minute. Oh, hell nah. I'm turning around. Nope. That is not dying in a minute 40.
What's wrong?
I'll put the whale on my hotbar till you get your thingy.
Hmm?
I said I'll put the whale on my hotbar till you get your mount speed.
Got it.
I was started. I was not tapped in when it started, it jump scared me.
Oh, okay. It's Kafka.
Oh, hell nah. You better be lying.
We're fucking dead. I forget what dungeon boss this is. What the old dungeon?
Is this the guy from, the Alliance raids?
Okay, level 26.
Perhaps.
In Endwalker? With all the, like,
No,
gods?
I think it's
Oh, hell no.
it's Stormblood. Pretty sure there's a Stormblood one. I think. Could be wrong. I've not taken my meds in like 4 days, and I keep saying, "Oh, I'm gonna go do it," and then I forget. I love my brain.
Go do it.
Well, I can't right now.
Yes, you can. You're gonna die anyway.
Whoa. Why is the
I love
person
all the
taking it so
warrior
much
actions.
slower than all of us?
I don't know. I had a tank grief the shit out of me earlier. It was really unfortunate.
Oh, there's a thingy there, ow.
Just set a timer for yourself to go off every day to take your medicine.
That's the thing. I do have one.
Fucking take your medicine.
I just need to be mind controlled to do it. Oh.
This is a reference to the enemy from Final Fantasy V. That's not what I wanted to know. Wait, is FF5 Evil's? Then that might be what I wanted to know.
I have no idea.
Well, I'm dead. That Death Frisbee is evil. It's purple windchime, is what it is.
There.
I just dashed through a frisbee. And I
Dude,
didn't
this little
die.
tiny baby pea is just sitting here. Being all cutesy. What else I needed, yeah? No matrons.
I'm wondering if that person who's always thanking healers at the end of every CE, if they even die or if they're just thanking healers. I'm starting to think they just thank healers.
Disgusting.
That samurai is dead as fuck. Yep.
Huh. These frisbees are trying to kill me. Kinda fucking rude.
So what is it? What is it that you guys are doing?
Oh hell no.
Oh hell no.
What's the content you guys are doing right now?
OC.
I call Crescent. OC is not helpful. But it's just what the thing
Crescent.
is that
Well, a cold crescent might just be meaningless
it
to
at
her
least
also.
it is, but it at least tells her what it is. Yeah, I'm doing OC, my original character. Thank you.
You know what, Blue? I hope you die. I was defending you. I was defending you. I hope this was you. Just because you stand in it does not mean that there's a difference
what you
between
did.
killing yourself and.
Look what you fucking did.
Oh, the death frisbees are coming back. Ow, ow, they hurt. Ow. Ow, how was I in that? Oh god, not the death frisbee. I disagree. I am pressing this button. I do not care.
Man, I kinda goaded as fuck.
You see my health bar.
Understand.
Yeah, that's what you get.
What the fuck? He can't do another raid. Why does he dies?
That's because you specifically told me to go die. Need to kill you.
Let's see.
Right, math.
Same as
I don't want it
Bill.
now.
Okay.
Indy said yes, OC. Bitch, I don't fucking know what that shit is.
See? Indy did the same thing. I'm not the only evil in the world. I'm only part of it.
This instance is about to die.
We could instance hop after this next boss if you wanted.
Okay. I'm gonna stay here till it explodes.
I'm checking the
I
top
know,
ones
yeah.
again.
I don't know any of the end game shit. I don't know what you guys are doing.
It's like a big open area where a lot of people can. It's like a big open area for fates, or with fates.
Yeah.
I don't know if you did Basha or Eureka.
I was
but
gonna say
that's
it's like what
basically
they
it.
had before, yeah.
Thing died quick. What the fuck?
No, not again. Don't do it.
That's fair, yeah.
If Yuzu dies, I'm not resing them.
Good. He said he hopes you die, so there you go. With your original character.
Tiny tear. I don't give
Is
anything
that-
fun.
I think all of the CEs probably give jewelry. It's just which jewelry. Something tells me I'm not making it to the deer from here.
Maybe. I don't think so from that high though. Actually, it did. Maybe.
I can
I'm stopping DPS.
throwing shit at it.
Because my DPS is so important on this thing.
You're doing great, dear.
Yeah, I got gold.
Someone
Why'd
just
you
got
get
level 40.
Why'd you get so much more knowledge than I did? Oh, you're 2 levels ahead of me. That's why.
Remember, he's a little behind, so they need to try and get him up with the rest of the kids. No kid left behind, you know.
Fun
They say
story.
that, but then LeBron James left his kid behind on the Lakers.
Fun story. They wanted to move me up, and my dad literally told them no because I was too socially awkward. Which I don't think was the
What?
case. But yeah.
Yeah, my mom made me do 3K because I was too socially awkward. And then math class teacher hated me. I stopped caring about school.
This was like first grade. He was like, "Yeah, we're not moving him up, even though I was smart enough to do it or whatever." He's like, he's too socially inept, so he's not moving it. I was like, "Oh, thanks for telling me that, Dad. That makes me feel really good about
Nice.
myself."
I mean, was he wrong though? Look at you now.
I mean, he created this.
So Indy, we've known Blue since he was a little spermy, basically.
That's not true. Not should I have been in your stream when I was? No. But
No.
was there any other Star Wars streamer? No. So I didn't care.
Mm.
And to be fair, that was before Twitch had like chat rules pinned, so then I met the quota when it was there, so it doesn't matter.
See, you didn't say anything, so you didn't say your age.
Nope. I might have been hella annoying, but you dealt with me.
You still are. It's okay.
It's a plus.
Mm-hmm. He truly never changed, guys.
Looks a tiny mage.
Yeah, I got the unicorn. How you doing? Speaking of Star Wars streams, what's up, Gabe? How you doing?
So we're gonna play 8.0, right?
Girl, I'm so
Oh,
far
I'm so
behind on
sorry.
story.
Towards-
So both of you actually.
Oh, okay.
It's the story of my life. I'm
Nice.
always behind on story. You should know this.
I don't think I've done any patch story, other than the one character story I did.
I think this is in.
Why
I
is
don't
he
know, or
make,
or it's just
Why is he
everybody.
capitalizing things like this? I didn't notice that before.
It's scary.
Well, there's a bunch of them. Oh, what the fuck?
I'm scared.
I'm gonna assume we go to the blue ones.
Because they're gonna smack first. To knock
Oh, because
back.
they're a knockback.
Just avoid
Shit, what else did I
those
need for
over.
this?
Oh, it's Endsinger.
except less hateful.
Except tiny and a mage.
It is gross to think you've known me for 14 years.
It is pretty gross. I don't want to talk about it. It's fucking terrible. Why would you ever bring that up?
Why'd you keep me around?
Nobody else would stick around. It's fine.
Because of me, probably.
Maybe.
We don't have to kill all of them, we just kill one and go away. Oh, never mind, we kill the
You sure?
faster.
Listen, I'm just as annoying. It's okay.
No.
Yes. You can't tell me otherwise. Fuck you. I'm harvesting shit. Getting my gill buns.
Do you have a crafter at 60 or is this going to be your first?
Crafter? I don't think so. Gatherers, yes.
Oh, you should be able to go unlock stuff from it, or do you have it already?
Oh, I have it unlocked.
Oh, I didn't know if you had it.
Because I used to do it on, wasn't on Botanist. I think it was on my miner I would do it on too. But
Oh,
Botanist
okay.
would make sense because I'm 64 on this character. I say this characters if I actually play other characters. Of course, I have the help of Hats being our Omni Crafter of like, hey, you need gear, here you go. Have fun.
Nice. I need to finish leveling up my crafters. Gatherers, I don't know if I'll ever have the discipline to do it. It pisses me off and bores me to death.
I mean, I'm just sitting here relaxing, talking to you guys. Well,
I was just saying crap.
or reminiscing on how annoying we both are. And I'm just running around gathering stuff right now. So that way I can work on Alchemist instead of buying stuff on the auction house. I'm just gathering my own shit because I can. There's a shiny over here. Where is it? Where is it? Where is she?
The mage has a lot of HP. I'm gonna eat shit down.
Do you think that if the tables were turned, he'd show us no mercy?
I'm gonna punch you in the throat.
Whoa! Why you say fuck me for?
I don't have a charge left. Oops.
Where is she? Rah, 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 rah. Quick, gather my buns, please. Okay, how many do I have?
I can get shit again.
Same.
This should
I'm
be.
convinced this shit doesn't exist.
Oh, I got no, I should say.
Oh, that fate is still going. I was correct.
Everyone's running. Gotta get to the pots.
I think I'm gonna try and make this fate, and then I'm gonna just run to bots.
It's a 96. I don't think we make that fate.
Okay, I don't think we make the fate's done. Okay, well I'm gonna go uncover the map over there in the corner and then go to bots.
I'm scared.
Oh look, it's the
Brian's
evil one of Doom. Ooh, there's a tree chasing me. That's not a tree. I don't
Good
know what the
luck.
fuck that is.
If this dinosaur attacks me, I'm gonna scream.
Yeah, but we're in range for that dinosaur now, so it shouldn't be so bad.
So true.
What the fuck? This, it's so bright in here.
I know I've been a real bad girl.
Mm.
I'm trying to recall where
survey point
pots
here.
are, and I'm scared. Just-
It's
I see
to the
everybody.
left of. Okay. Oh my god.
You might have to just take the L so you can get here. 'Cause I can't make it over there and make it back.
It's okay. It was only half a CE worth of XP. That's not that bad. It could have been worse.
I'm sorry, but I can't get there.
I was like, ooh, a survey point, and then I unmounted, and then another one was came from in front of me. It scared the fuck out of me.
It's a time to die.
There you go. There's that little shit.
My phone does not hold a charge anymore, and it pisses me off. I charge it every day.
My phone case doesn't hold my phone anymore, and it pisses me off.
Invalid.
I was like, why am I hearing myself twice? It's because the iPad microphone was on still too.
Oh, you're gonna hit max level a lot faster than I am. I'm so much further away.
Oh, on the character, on the class.
Yeah.
Good
What are you
thing
guys
we have, like
leveling?
40 things to level. It's just one of the jobs you get in this area.
Nice.
They have like little extra actions.
They're all based on the jobs from Final Fantasy V. And I noticed that one of them is a Falconer, which I
Surely we don't get one of those in this game for real,
Mm-mm.
for real.
the writing may have been on the walls, as some might say.
Trying to target this character, I'll stop jumping.
Sorry.
Not you, the other one.
Oh,
You're
I
not a
thought you meant
cat
I was
girl,
jumping.
no,
Hi, cutie.
stupid.
I thought you meant I was jumping in front of them.
Oh no.
Kristen just sees the camera and immediately thinks she's going to be getting TRETSs when that's not how it works. Although she's in front of her treat bot right now. I hate how much better the camera looks.
Am I missing an ability?
What? Probably not.
I think I am missing an ability.
In real life or on your
Just-
character?
Just look at my hotbar. I have everything, minus the stun. That I don't put on my tank's hotbars. That's
No,
just
I
the
just...
Yeah, I'll get this last one and then I'm going to start making these.
Well, at worst case, if we don't get a pot, we can go to the CE.
How'd you manifest that?
I manifested both of us getting pots, actually.
Far, far southeast.
Far, far to the west. God damn it, that means the other side again.
They take us away from each other. The fuck?
That was north, right?
Oh, it's the one up here. Oh, I'm mad. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you might have to go into the evil place of doom where I just was before I
It's right
respawned.
here. I'm going to the evil place of doom. There's no mobs up here though, right now.
I'll do this one. It's fun.
This better be a gold.
I believe. Or a silver and a gold.
What's over? Chance?
Let's see if I have enough space.
Got nothing, but whatever.
Southwest. I guess it's not this one. Why can't I actually? What the fuck? This can't keep happening. What's this one? It was bronze. And it's gone. At least I'm here for the fate. You got more obols than I did. That's fucked up.
Carrot spotted. I did get a lot of gold obols for that and silver actually.
Gold obols in this area, I think, are just. I mean, they're not useless. They're used for
They're
upgrading.
cosmetic.
No, they're well, cosmetic, but also used for upgrading material. More so than like actually just skipping
Oh, I
material.
didn't make it instead.
Level am I doing
Bunch
this
of
till?
There's a new one already.
30.
Dragon with a shield and poison balls. I don't remember a dragon with a shield and poison balls. Just jumped off a cliff in front of a mountain. Almost pulled it. A true full
Death.
experience.
I was thinking going back to the south horn probably won't be as annoying.
Yeah.
But we're on level. This area just seemed less frustrating. I don't know.
This area?
Yeah.
I gotta check out my
Yeah,
laundry
Like the
soon.
mobs are spaced out better.
I mean, that we also haven't been tasked with going to anywhere genuinely evil, like in the South Horn.
They did that
Like the
shit
cave.
immediately. They said time to die.
The cave, genuine evil. I mean, I guess that sewer system is genuine evil. Which is where you almost had to go.
I'll be back.
Okay.
I gotta check out my laundry.
I have no chests here. I guess I haven't checked the spawn chests in a while.
I'm gonna go to the northeast or northwest.
Part of me wonders if our chests are in Super Hell.
They probably are. I don't even know how to get to Super Hell.
I don't either. I somehow did something and it discovered the rest of the lake.
Where did you come from, you bastard?
Evil creature of doom. I'm coming.
Pull to use you. I got smacked by something. Look at him, man.
I'm
I
not
literally
looking
did
at the
not
map,
see
I'm
this thing,
looking
no.
at the chest. There's a difference.
Oh, bro. There's a few of these creatures here, but should be okay. As long as his gremlin ass does not come back around. Oh, he's flipped around. That's rude. Why you turn around?
Oh, good heavens.
Evil as fuck.
Oh my god, there's another one of us. This is ass towards us.
Get away from my box, you glob.
I should check this little chest.
I feel like I'm gonna jump into something and die immediately. I don't think I have this over. For whatever reason.
I got a Moonfire Tango. Oh, that's the swimsuit. But what the fuck? What's that here?
I don't know, they just put a bunch of random bullshit here.
I have the bronze chest. Or I
I
have
gotta
a
go
bronze
down
chest.
there. And look to the area.
Oh god.
She's such a little poop.
Sorry. Yuzu.
There's genuine evil here. Be careful.
I don't care about unlocking this area right now.
Steve says I should go to the moon to go craft.
Oh, that's just a. Oh, that area is a lot safer than the rest of it. Oh yeah, you could do the. You could do
It's good. Can you
yeah,
unlock it though? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think you just need to be. You just need to go through Dawn Trail, and then you could do that. And they've got stuff from 1 to 100. I like almost forgot that you could do that on the lower level classes, even though they give you a lower level weapon.
I haven't messed with the moon very much. I like the moon gathering more than I like the.
Oh yeah, I can go because I did Endwalker, so
It's Dawn Trail.
you must have
I did.
completed the Endwalker main story quest and have at least one disciple of the hand
Huh.
or land job at level
It
10.
got added in Dungeon, but yeah, it's.
Oh, I just assumed it would because I didn't
It's what's
see it in the
the
quest. Yeah, the
rabbits.
bunnies. Hello, birds.
Yeah. Little loppy lops.
What the hell?
This is just random bullshit o'clock.
I don't remember what this is, but this is familiar.
It's familiar.
I don't know what
From
that means.
50 dungeons.
Oh. I'll say, yeah, I don't know what that means, but I know what that means.
That's a familiar for this one.
Oh man, how many did I make? Ooh.
Sweet. Oh, it's the
have 2 more turn-ins.
Necromancer one again. We gotta go.
You know, I gotta get my chest though.
Go in the chest.
Okay, I need to go do another class. I don't know what that's for them.
Oh, you can do Cannon Mirror. If you have
I'll do
to.
Samurai.
That's
I had another
600
one.
opals. Oh my god.
Oh, it's done. Going to it and then I'll go to the critical.
I was thinking about also we could like use the or get the gear from South more and then just upgrade it here. But I don't think it's. I think it takes a lot, costs a lot more.
Nine.
I didn't even know you could get 1600 ovals. That's a crazy reward.
Should hit 30 here in a second.
I wish it was silvers, but
Nice.
actually I can get a class with that. That's what I can get.
Do you think I can tag this? Oh, it's gonna do that same thing when I'm going to the engagement.
Don't be evil.
Yeah. It's the fucking. What's it? Yeah, that thing is not dying.
Oh, am I gonna make it? If I go base or oh, well, actually, am I gonna make a period?
I got a silver chest here.
I'm still good on this. Okay. Hey girl, what are you doing? What you going under here for, huh? Huh?
I gotta find a fixative.
Nice. You only need one more for one piece.
Wahoo.
Upgrade it to max. Totally. No. Bronze. No. Tree. Tree. Yes. What the hell? That's the ghost, spooky ghost in here.
I don't want to tank that bitch. Thank God people could be.
Whoever that was on almost died.
What is this? Oh, it's a stun. Why do I? Oh, that's the samurai ability. I guess. Forgot I switched class.
How do I make you? Oh, Cinnabar. High quality shit too, yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, once you get like to a certain level, one of your buttons just like has a chance to insta-kill things. Not
Nice.
monsters, obviously. So,
Weird.
but that's why people take it.
Hey lady, how you been? What you been up to? Haven't seen you in a bit. Dude, I don't need that money. I kind of did. Life's been wild, but been good. That's good. Busy. Goodness, this little man's behind me too, asleep. I'll turn that off now. I've been busy working. Getting ready to head on my trip at the end of the month. Where's the client? Oh, over where I just was. The Gorge in Washington State for Labor Day weekend for Dave Matthews Band, and then I'm heading down to BlizzCon right after that. I ain't reading all that. Yeah. I'm excited. I haven't been to BlizzCon since 2019? Is it 17? When was it? Yeah, 2017. Because Muse closed it out, and they announced BFA, Classic servers, Moira, and Overwatch League was announced too. That's when StarCraft 2 went free to play as well. The only reason why I went last time is because it was free for me. Tally pay to have his mods go out to BlizzCon that year.
No hands suffering. How it hurts. Oh, I'm dead.
For the WoW expansion, I played through the story. Then I was doing some leveling, but then I got boring. And Steven wanted me to play this again, so. With the new expansion announced, and there were the fan fest happening too.
I'm
I got a lot of catching up to do on story and stuff, so.
Oh,
You
you're
really
dead.
did. That hurt. Maybe that's what they wanted, a blood sacrifice.
What'd you do that for?
So he can become a necromancer.
Hmm.
If he sacrifices himself, then it'll better his odds.
True, true.
Okay, so then this time I'm not gonna miss when they go diagonal. They just all went straight
What
instead
are
of
you
diagonal
doing?
again.
I wonder how much damage they actually do.
A lot.
Oh, bro.
Yeah. I found that out already.
Shit's
Granted, I
here
have a few
stalking.
insects.
Okay.
We should see if any of the glam we're getting in there, Caitlin's.
I've been holding onto it.
I know, I just was thinking of it. Because I have like every piece that drops from
I'm gonna go sell this stuff too.
All this like glam salts for like one on the auction or the market board already. I was looking. Ow. The number keeps going up. And he died.
Yeah, 10.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yippee!
It worked.
Oh,
I
I
got
gotta
the
go.
Goodbye, Samurai.
Oh, where is this?
Now I got an extra one so I can turn that in. Oh, there's a fate right outside. Oh, right, it was that. I forgot about that.
It did take a blood sacrifice.
Now, will we get the deer also? That's the true blood sacrifice.
You're almost 23.
Well, I mean, I tagged it.
I tagged it too, I got silver.
How did we get silver? What the
Touched it
fuck?
once. I can probably go get a class now too. I have 1,000 silver.
There's 1,600.
Oh, there's 600.
Yeah.
Oh, so sad.
I would say for gear TBH. The gear is
No.
like decent. Okay.
It's been a little bit 7 here. Jeez. Is it a cosmic homecoming? Yeah.
You can't do it like that. I tried already. Unless you just did it like that, in which case ignore me.
Which fat cat are you talking about? Because there's one on the screen too. Is that what this one? You talking about that one? Yeah. looking up at me? Piston, what is it?
Wow.
What?
I got that turned in for a lot, that extra one.
Here, hold on. You've been a good little girl. Hold on a second.
Oh, the extra necromancer souls from
Oh, you got another one?
Yep.
What a good one.
I got 10 silver opals. Kinda rich.
She
There's
waits a
2
second
gold
now.
sword classes. I got one of them. I got Dragoon.
It's called a treat bot. I found out about them at TwitchCon last year, and I've gotten a couple people to get them. Guy 3D prints them himself and does all the programming and stuff for it. Greetings and salutations, my good madam. Oh, hold on a second. I'm in the wrong screen. Bajoom. I am called Naming Way, and as for you, I suppose we shall see. For the moment, I am in need of directions. I have heard...
Incoming raid.
Why, hello there, Mr. Big Kahuna. How are we today? Hold, please. How you doing, man? How you doing, Mark? What you been up to? Of course, you're playing Division. And my lights got broken for some reason. There we go. We're also feeding the little baby. Hold on. I'll show you guys this. Well, I can't see the treat bot, little one, when you're in front of it. She's like, I don't care. Are you ready? Ready? There's a little app or a little extension down below that if it just costs 5 bits and you can give the baby little treats. She's staring at it still. Yeah. I have it down to 5 bits, so. Because I guess she deserves them sometimes. Here, I got another surprise for you. Hold on a second. That's Dutch. Oh, I also got this too. There you go. You guys can watch Dutch for a little while. He's like, huh? She is right in front of it, by the way. She heard it go off. But yeah, it was great. That guy was awesome over at TwitchCon. So I got a couple of my friends to pick one up. He does them for, it also works for dogs too. And then there's different sizes. There's 2 different sizes for it as well. Peanut. You can't just hog it, little girl. She's like, yes, I can. She will sit and she will wait. And sit and wait and sit and wait and sit and wait. Whenever I come in here, she immediately comes in here and she will sit there and wait and sleep with the little treat bot. It is her emotional support treat bot. Okay. We're unlocking the moon to go and craft, so. Yes, she said I'm not listening to you. It's powered. It comes with the charger and stuff, USB charger. And then it's got its own app. It connects to your Wi-Fi, so you can kind of have it anywhere you want and set it up wherever you want that has a Wi-Fi connection. And you just connect it to the app. When you get one, they actually he'll actually send you a setup for your specific one. So, because they all have different, I think obviously different addresses and stuff like that, different IPs. For the moment, I am in need of directions. I have heard tell of other Loporrits roaming the city, long-eared and charmingly fuzzy like myself. Might you have seen any? I met a colony of them on the moon. The moon! You met the entire Fluffle? How did you even get up there? Aliens. I see. So the people have, the people of Etheris have, but recently secured a reliable means of transit to the moon. Why did I not hear of this sooner? If what you say is true, at long last I can return home. Aww. Oh, he can return home to his lovelies. That's so cute. You would not believe what I've endured on this star. It's been one ordeal after another. I first set out to study Etheris over 100 years ago. Mine was a solitary mission, yet one of tremendous importance, and I vowed to see it through. Alas, my survey pod suffered a bit of a rocky landing, smashed to smithereens, and thus I was stranded on this star with no method of contacting my compatriots. But did I despair? No, I did my duty. I scoured every elm of this world all on my lonesome, trusting that someday, somehow, I would make it home. It was not until recently, however, that the rumor of moonfolk descending upon this bastion of scholars reached my ears. I immediately stowed away on a vessel bound for Old Charlian to investigate their veracity, and here we are. For so long, I have yearned to return home to my Bestways burrow and reunite with my comrades. Please, will you tell me how to reach Mayor Lamentorum? The Tower of Babel, you say? As I myself visited Garlemald some few decades ago, I dare say I'll have no trouble finding my way there again. However, after 100 years away, I'm not sure what manner of welcome awaits me. Given your familiarity with my kin, perhaps you could serve as moral support? Oh, thank you. I'm fortunate indeed to have crossed paths with someone so kind. Then, without further ado, I shall meet you in Mare Lamentorum. Space quests! Space quests! Okay, she's laying next to it now. The moon. We're on the moon. do I need in here? Oh, we're just missing quests. Do the moon vibes though. Oh wait, no, not yet. The destination first. Sometime later. There you are. Phew. That certainly was my idea of a relaxing climb. You lot should really consider giving that old tower a fresh coat of paint, or at least removing some of the more sinister devices. Nevertheless, here I am. A few things may have changed in my absence, but there's no mistaking it. I've come home. And it seems the lights are on at the burrow, shall we? Do we get cat NPCs in the next expansion? Aww. Look how excited. That can't be him. Surely it's not him. Is it? There's no mistaking that red garb. Oh my gosh. Yes, it is I, Naming Way. I am ever so glad to see you all awake. Naming Way? It is you! Where have you been for the past century? Searching Way! I was surveying Etheris as you ordered, but I'm afraid there were complications. Oh my gosh, the fast forwarding. Have a good night, lady. It's good to see you. Sleep well. Thank you for the little treat for the baby too. I appreciate it. So the Survey-Pod was destroyed? What a catastrophe. It certainly hindered my ability to travel. Regardless, my mission was a success, and I return to you now with a shocking revelation. The people of Ethereus, you see, are tiny! Every last one! Tragic, isn't it? But we've been aware for some time with our regular encounters with Asami and her fellows. You may find it hard to believe, but the final days have been averted entirely. There's no need to evacuate. Our job is done. Our what is what? You mean to tell me an entire century of hard work has come to naught? Don't lose heart, my friend. We Loporrits may no longer have a Hydaelyn given purpose, but we are free to discover new dreams of our own. Really? What's your new dream, Searching Way? My dream? My dream? Why, I have the grandest dream of all. I call it the Cosmic Exploration Initiative. Not bad for a novice, eh? Though naming was always your forte, not mine. It was you who suggested Carrots of Happiness, not to mention Bestway's Burrow. And that was before you got a centuries of added insight under your belt. What if we found a new purpose for all that you've learned? Imagine how many discoveries await us on other stars. They'll need names, you know. You want me to name your discoveries? Not for duty's sake, but for the simple joy of it? Why, I should be glad to. I can think of no nomenclature, I can't pronounce that, prospect more enticing. Bloody 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 blah. What about you? Won't you join us in the final frontier? Think of the strange new... Oh my goodness. I need to take a picture of that. Hold on. Okay. Oh my gosh. The Star Trek references. I can't. I'm not the one in the red shirt. Fantastic, welcome aboard. I'll have Driving Way take you to our base of operations straight away. Those Star Trek references, I can't.
Why does this pixel look cooler than EOS?
Oh, we gotta go back into the north one.
Okay, I guess we'll go back to the north one for a bit. We get to the top first. And finish the quest.
I'm gonna go pee and take my medicine.
Take your medicine.
Take your medicine. The Star Trek references in the moon area. I can't deal with it. It's so good. Looking for a ride on the Burrow's Best Rover? Sami and Naming Way have joined the project. I'd like you to take them to the hub. You got it, boss. We'll be cruising across the craters in no time. Listen here. The base is a long way out. No Aether right on the count of the magnetic interference, so it's my way or the highway. You got it? Safety first. We wouldn't want anyone to go flying off into the cosmos just yet. I'll take my own vehicle and meet you there. Keep your tails in your seats and all of your paws inside the rover. It's gonna be a bumpy ride. Hop in, look at Driving Way, look at Driving Way. Look at how cool Driving Way is. Oh my gosh. Welcome to the Moongate Hub, home of the Cosmic Exploration Initiative. Oh my gosh, the music is so good. Now that you're here, allow me to explain the course I've charted for this project. There's a lot of work to be done, but our first priority is the completion of the and maintenance of our base here. After that, the sky's the limit. Somewhat literally, as I discovered. An entirely new starship is required for our mission, as apparently I'm not authorized to fly the whole moon off to mother knows where. I plan for our ventures to only be moderately death-defying, so it's vital that we have a dock for landing our craft and facilities for its maintenance as well. We also require specialized machinery for surveying and recovering materials, but you needn't worry. The work will be divided amongst all of us. Will it indeed? I wager it would take more than an army to handle all of that. We have plenty of volunteers, Loperate, stadium facility, our faculty, gleaners. None can resist the siren song of the unknown. And many paws truly do make light work. Our starship and facilities are already operational, though we are continuing to test our failsafes. For your part, you can begin by having a look around and familiarizing yourself with the Sinus Ardorum. Naming way. If you see anything you don't recognize, your task is to think of a fitting name and report back. I'll ensure it's made official. An invigorating assignment if ever there was one. I do so enjoy my carefully considered monikers entering the common parlance. Sami, I'd like you to make full use of your artisanal skills. Naturally, for an operation of this scale, communication is paramount. Take the Exo Tablet, standard issue for members of our initiative. Displays our team's progress and requisitions updated in real time. We're also designing proprietary tools for crafting and gathering across the cosmos. I'll provide you with a prototype, but you'll need to speak with Researching Way for details. And with that, I think I've gone on long enough. Assisting with missions around the base will help you understand the initiative better than any explanation from me, so I bid you go forth. Heck yeah. Rest assured I'll do my part. No novelty should go unnamed on my watch. The Loperettes were always so cute. You've been issued an Exo Tablet. You may review the latest project developments at any time within the cosmic exploration areas. Take part in missions to further exploration of the sea of stars and aid Searching Way and his crew in realizing their dream. Furthermore, the Loperettes have developed a means of mitigating magnetic interference, enabling one-way transportation from the Bestways Burrow Aetheryte to the Sinus Ardorum. As part of the team, you'll work alongside fellow residents of your homeworld to explore and develop this area as well as a new planet you reach. Further each objective through crafting and gathering, shape your surroundings with new facilities designed to aid in greater exploration. Oh, it's actually like class restrictions and quest sync. The central activities of cosmic exploration, such as stellar missions, are designed for disciples of the Hand and Land. Stellar missions employ quest sync, which adjust the difficulty and XP rewards to your current level. Speak to Driving Way in the Bestways Burrow to reach the area and subsequent stars once the initiative is ready to make the hop. Alternatively, you can travel to the latest accessible planet via the Bestways Burrow Aetheryte. Zone effects. Within cosmic exploration zones, the Rainbow Crystal converts a crafter or gatherer's sprint action into a stellar sprint, boosting movement speed and effect duration. Check your Exo Tablet. In addition to stellar missions, cosmic exploration offers a variety of other activities. Refer to your Exo Tablet and open the exploration guide to learn more. Okay, give me one moment. This is where Steve's been for a while. You guys enjoy the music. I'll be right back. I gotta start our grill for barbecue and for dinner. Be right back.
It's not done. Or people aren't doing that, I should say. Oh, I guess everyone's here now. Well, I watched a video, Blue. If we wanted to go farm XP there.
Boo-bye.
Oh, I said I watched a video of what some people are doing with RMSB. In South Wireless. I'm sure there's maybe a better one in North one. I don't know of it yet. I'll give it a go. Yeah, I don't know if there's any North one farming rides. I think we're just using South one, so wait, hold on.
I missed the pool stream for Android.
Take
Really started.
I want to roll more. It makes me sick. What's wrong with me?
Okay. Owing to
mental illness.
area contributions by artisans like you, we have achieved every last objective outlined. Enjoy well rest Taylor for future updates. This place is cool as hell.
I resisted it. I resisted my deep freeze. What the hell? It puts doom on me when that happens.
Wait, what happened? I missed it.
If I use my deep freeze, I didn't read that it puts doom on me.
Oh, that's
So,
probably why you have the death ignore button.
probably. No, because I think doom kills you through it.
Oh.
I just can't use it without being ignored.
Okay. I love how driving away is just sitting here, all cute like.
I said the heal myself, that's what it is.
When is our starship the very manifestation of our collective aspirations? Though diminutive in size and propulsion capacity compared to the Ragnarok, it is nevertheless heir to its legacy. For data collected during the journey to Ultima Thule, was the basis of our craft's ability to ride stellar currents at the speed of light. In anticipation for its future voyages across the cosmos, it should be known as the Galactic Way. It may carry us to the unknown and beyond our wildest dreams. And now now I say that we venture further afield. Pray accompany me to the Gleam Slope. Our outer edge by Gleam Rift will do. That's the Rainbow Crystal. Are you familiar with the Rainbow Crystal in the center of the hub? Though it is slightly different than those in the burrow, I see no reason to change its appellation. It's simple, clear, and has the word rainbow. What's not like to like? Anyway, such crystals regulate gravity and oxygen levels, allowing us to maintain ideal living environments for the people here. Something to sold. I am told that they can be recalibrated for use on any star we come across. We're gonna go this way. I need to get myself some more buff food. Wow. Oh, there's a mount too. The moon. Naming way showing me around. Have you heard of the tunnel they carved through this mountain? It was done entirely by machinery. No magics at all. A valuable experiment in anticipation of stars where aether is scarce. And just look at that luster. It's where I drew my inspiration for Gleam Slope naturally. It may be little more than a twinkle, but when we're out there traversing the cosmos, I do hope we'll see it shining back at us. Our dream of reaching the stars beyond is what inspired this project to begin with. And the name stands as a testament to that longing. I rather resent the Garlean, that Garlean has become the standard for names of lunar features in my absence, but inconsistency would be even worse. There's so much more I could show you, but I'll settle for just one last jaunt to Wedding Ways Bower. Or Bower. It's all the way over there. Would have been more fun if they hopped on the back of the mount for the escort quests. Okay, go around this way. Getting ready to barbecue here soon. Here we have the botanical gardens where Weddingway is attempting to determine whether we can utilize the rainbow crystals to cultivate life on other stars. Fortunately for us, the experiments have resulted in a delightful array of crossbreeds. See for yourself. Following event cannot be skipped. You wish to cancel any pending due to final registrations. Look at it now. I can scarcely believe this area was once a barren waste, but I digress. Find out anything that catches your eye and I should be happy to expound on the particulars. By all means, take your time. This garden as well is worth the look. Long and blue with a flower on top reminds you of a lunar tender, does it not? Indeed, the resemblance is uncanny. Some of the lunar tenders are evolved from ethereous sabotenders that adapted to the moon's environment. Perhaps these, in turn, evolved from lunar tenders. Unlike their alleged cousins, however, these are unmistakably flora, not fauna. I've named them the Sabotended to mourn their lost autonomy. This is pretty. Okay, that recovers the moon surface is made up of particles too fine for plants to lay root. To combat this, we've been experimenting with an alchemal soil treatment. This improved soil is to be known as remedied regolith. As you can see, it's already growing a layer of pink moss. For now, Wedding Ways is the only place to witness this botanical miracle. But should we succeed in fostering more types of plant growth, we may be able to grow entire farms on other stars. Bright blue bush. Believe it or not, that leafy-looking bush is a type of fungus known as turquoise shag. I'm told its peculiar glow activates in response to electromagnetic waves, effectively rendering those energies visible to the naked eye. Charlian researchers have begun to debate the possibility of information wavelength that exists beyond our kin, all because of this fungus. Fascinating. Massive mushroom mound? Whoa! The sizable specimen on the cliff? Yes, you may recognize it from Lovingway's darlings in Mare Lamentorum. It's called a loving puff. Fearsome though it may appear, I assure you it's entirely benign. When it senses an animal's approach, it lets out a puff of spores to say hello. Look at that one. Mind you, those spores are wont to hitch rides on the unsuspecting and rather quick to germinate besides. I could have sworn Wedding Ways wasn't planning to plant any. Tree with exploding blooms? These are really pretty. Incredible, isn't it? That's no tree, but in fact a magnificent mushroom transplanted from Mare Lamentorum, and henceforth known as the Mycoflox. Inspired by the hot summers on Aetheris, its name means fungal flame. I see somebody over there. Right there. I see that thing right over there. It seems to be watering all the plants. When you gaze up on its gills, does it not bring to mind fireworks blooming in the night sky? With further refinement, perhaps we could even teach the species to pop and crackle like its namesake. What a sight it would be amid all those stars. Have you had a good look, or would you like more time? I've seen it all. Wonderful. It's been a delight to show you all of... That's really cute. This has been a really cute story so far. When it comes to my process, observation is of vital importance, of course. But a well-designed appellation can offer established cognitive links where physical appearance alone could not. Given a proper name, what once was nebulous moves into the light for all to see. A discovery named is a discovery shared. Great awareness, in turn, invites research, prompting further discoveries. In other words, my nomenclature may one day change the world. With each term I craft, I feel a spark of joy that reignites my passion all over again. Truly, I've never been gladder to call myself Naming Way. They're so freaking cute. You know, when Searching Way first arrived, this region was merely an expanse of unknowns. And then you and I turned up, and now look at it. Every last ilm identified. Yet, this is far from the final frontier. We must continue the initiative that we might one day put a name to each and every star in the sky. Well, how invigorating. Searching Way will surely want to share in our enthusiasm. Let's us return to the hub. Nope, for an event. It's gotta be these things, right? Oh no, I see them, I see them, I see them, I see them. They're glowing. There are a ton of them through here. I only got one? I can't carry anymore. close enough to these guys.
I mean, this was,
How are you guys doing?
I think we're doing.
Yeah,
We're dying.
fun.
Wouldn't be a real party without dying a little bit.
That's in one game.
Tank privilege.
Old pots for Fort Tower. What? Oh, hell no.
Sorry, I'm kind, but not that kind. And really not even that little bit of kind either. And if all these people steal one of my pots, I'm gonna scream.
Eh. I don't think you will.
I'm going to.
But why did I get on this island if I Blue Mage? Blue Mage is a lot less.
I'm going on again.
Well, now we have to get the C's anyway.
I'm at 2,600 at the 7K I need for this level. So I'm dedicated to being Necromancer. If I can't get the title, I'll get the class.
I got a pot. You got a pot. And there's C. That's not what we need.
R4 Northeast, I'm gonna grab. Goodbye, road.
R4 Northeast. Quincy.
At least we can die together.
Ow.
Far east. Oh, is mine in the center again? It is. Keep
Far,
going.
far east. Mine's also on the center.
Let's see.
Why the hell did you run this one? Like, this. I said there's like one that's like 2 feet in front of us.
The returning's fun. Southwest.
I'm gonna stand on this one. I guess it's this one. Northwest. Northwest.
Southwest.
Still working on the moon stuff.
Oh, I just got a jet black die.
Look at you.
I got a second one.
Northwest. I have a
You
lot.
also. Oh. Wait, what does the jetpack back on?
No radiation, just a bronze cover.
Oh. R4 Northeast.
I'm scared to death to be here though.
I don't know where.
Oh,
I get this done by myself.
northwest. Immediately to the northwest, it's right here. I might die getting those.
I got another place.
Okay, just be smart. Go ninja.
We got a Dawn Trail orchestration.
Northeast. I don't know
Oh,
how
I
to
think
get
it was. I think it was. I think it was on the stairs. It's where the green dot is. I think it was on something.
don't go there. No, it's
It was
over
outside.
here. That's in there.
Time for a little bit.
Who's in the building here?
I lied to you. Or it's just out, not in the building.
That's evil as hell.
Oh man.
Okay. I wish I had a carrot.
Oh, you can
I'm
get
so
us
close to
in.
doing this solo.
Have a chest in hell, so I'm gonna go to hell. Or super hell, sorry.
Oh my goodness. Unless I didn't unlock the Moon Gate hub.
Alright, so you're ready to see Super Hill?
I thought you said we couldn't unlock Super Hill.
No, I'm going to it right now.
Oh, okay.
It's not fun. It's down this stairs, I forgot.
He is kind of off on his own like normal. Hello, Randy. What you doing, little baby girl? Old lady, what you doing?
Party food. Watch this.
Randy.
What?
Randy, come here.
Far southeast. That's stupid.
Randall.
Northeast, so it's this one.
I'm so scared right now.
Northwest. What? Something far to the northwest. What? There's something to the northwest. Oh, it's this spot. Why is it here? This is a silver chest.
There you go.
That was...
Into the butthole of Super Hell.
Oh.
Oh!
What'd you get? What'd you get?
Oh, well, decent. No, it's 500k, but I mean, I think I'd rather just keep it.
The class is up where?
A magic one, of course.
You see how terrifying this place is? Of course I have a chest.
I know, I'm
on
watching
me.
you go through.
These modes are 47, I'm so dead. And it's worth it. Oh, please turn. Don't. Okay. So scared.
Which building is it?
Cutscene. My favorite vista. See the entire hub from here. Precisely, whenever my motivation starts to wane, this site reminds me of the dream we're chasing together. When the final days were averted, it was a joyous occasion, yet we Loperites lost our purpose, and for some, the will to carry on. My role is to seek out a new star for us to call home, but it was decided that no exodus would come to pass. While my hunger for worlds unknown and sights unseen remained, I fear that there was no meaning to be found in it. Yet in Old Sharlayan, I learned that the scholars at the studium had continued their research even under the threat of impending doom. Their desire to learn wasn't dampened by the possibility that it might come to naught. People of Etheris can pursue knowledge without knowing where they'll end up. I thought, why not me? Curiosity needs no justification. If my heart yearns for the great expanse, then so be it. To the stars I'll go. Aww. I love it. Remarkable how far that epiphany has taken you, searching way. Look at all that your initiative has built. The Galactic Way awaits on its launch pad. Now we only need the coordinates for our first destination. We're ready for liftoff. Will you follow me to the stars? Complete 100 stellar missions to become eligible to undertake an additional quest. Okay. What I'm gonna do is, because I kind of want to chill with Steve while we barbecue, I'm gonna head out, at least streaming. Find somebody else to raid for, or to send you guys to. Let's see. Yes, dear. Huh? Okay. Yeah, why?
Just the fact that they're wow, just respecting
The cult, yeah. Bro. Yeah. Yep. I understand that. Okay. I'm gonna send you guys on over to Jade. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I am off Monday, Tuesday. I'm gonna try and get some errands done though, but I am off Monday, Tuesday because I'm working the event that's coming up this weekend. So I'm gonna be working a lot. Like until my trip basically, so. Thank you guys for hanging out. Indy, enjoy time with the hubby, yeah. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate it, guys. Mark, thank you again for the raid earlier. I appreciate it. Chris, thank you for the biddies. And Miss Ermiger, thank you for the biddies too. I appreciate it, guys. You guys have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will probably see you guys. I don't know if we're doing Star Trek tomorrow night. I think while Gemrick's in town. I don't think we're doing Star Trek, so I'll try and get in some streaming tomorrow. We'll see. Or I might just chill, work on stuff around the house like I'm supposed to. You know.